The dirt hadn't even settled on Catherine Ward's grave when her husband Noel stood in Pine Ridge's one-room schoolhouse, hat in his weathered hands, asking the pregnant teacher to marry him. "I buried my wife yesterday," he said, his voice cracking like autumn leaves. "Will you marry me today?" The scandal would rock their mountain town for generations. A desperate widower, 3 orphaned children, and a woman carrying another man's child, all bound together by necessity rather than love. But sometimes the most unlikely unions forge the strongest bonds. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story of redemption travels across our great nation. The morning mist clung to Pine Ridge like a shroud, and Anna James wondered if the mountain town was trying to hide its secrets from the world below. She stood at the schoolhouse window, one hand pressed against her growing belly, watching the funeral procession wind its way up Cemetery Hill. Even from this distance she could make out Noel Ward's broad shoulders, bent now under a grief so heavy it seemed to pull the very air down around him. "Poor Catherine," Anna whispered to the empty classroom, her breath fogging the glass. "And those poor children." She'd taught all 3 Ward children, 12-year-old Matthew with his father's stubborn jaw, 10-year-old Sarah with her mother's gentle eyes, and little Tommy, barely 6, who still believed his mama was just sleeping and would wake up soon. The thought of what would become of them now sent a chill through Anna that had nothing to do with the October wind rattling the schoolhouse windows. Anna turned from the window and smoothed her dark woolen dress over her expanding waistline. 4 months along now, and the town's whispers had grown as round as her belly. "Poor Anna James," they said. "Such a good teacher, such a shame about her situation." They never said it to her face, of course. Mountain folk were too polite for that. But she heard the conversations that stopped when she entered the mercantile, saw the pitying looks when she walked to church on Sundays. The charity board had already made their intentions clear. Without a woman to care for them, the Ward children would be separated, sent to different relatives scattered across 3 states, or worse, to the children's home in the county seat. The thought made Anna's chest tighten. She'd seen what happened to children who lost their way in the world. Her own childhood had been marked by such losses. A knock at the schoolhouse door interrupted her thoughts. Anna straightened her shoulders and walked across the wooden floor, her footsteps echoing in the empty room. Classes had been dismissed early out of respect for the funeral, but she'd stayed behind to prepare lessons for the week ahead. Teaching was all she had left now, her reputation, her livelihood, her purpose. She opened the door, expecting to find perhaps Mrs. Henderson from the mercantile or one of the other ladies from town come to offer condolences or perhaps to fish for gossip about her condition. Instead, she found herself face to face with Noel Ward himself. The man looked as if he'd aged a decade in the 3 days since Catherine's passing. His dark hair, usually neatly combed, fell across his forehead in unruly waves. His blue eyes, once bright with laughter when he'd come to pick up his children from school, now seemed as gray as the October sky. The black suit he wore hung loose on his frame, as if grief had somehow diminished him physically. "Mr. Ward," Anna said softly, stepping back to allow him entry. "I'm so very sorry for your loss. Catherine was—" "Miss James," he interrupted, his voice rough as sandpaper. "I need to speak with you. May I come in?" Anna nodded, though something in his manner set her nerves on edge. This wasn't the casual visit of a grieving parent seeking comfort from his children's teacher. There was an urgency in his movements, a desperation in his eyes that spoke of a man standing at the edge of a cliff. Noel stepped into the schoolhouse and removed his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. The autumn light filtering through the windows cast long shadows across his weathered face, highlighting the new lines that grief had carved there. "Please sit down," Anna offered, gesturing toward one of the chairs near her desk. "Can I get you some water? Coffee?" "No, thank you." He remained standing, his gaze moving around the familiar classroom. The slate board where his children had learned their letters, the world map that had fired Tommy's imagination with tales of distant lands, the bookshelf that Sarah had devoured one volume at a time. This place, Catherine always said you were a godsend, said you understood children in a way that most adults forget how to do. Anna felt tears prick her eyes. She was very kind and very proud of Matthew, Sarah, and Tommy. They're wonderful children, Mr. Ward. You and Catherine raised them well. Something flickered across Noel's face, pain, perhaps, or guilt. He turned his hat in his hands. Another revolution before speaking again. Miss James, I'm going to say something that's going to shock you. I need you to hear me out before you respond. Anna's hand instinctively moved to her belly. In her condition, she'd grown accustomed to shocking conversations. All right. Noel took a deep breath as if steeling himself for battle. The charity board met this morning, after the funeral. They've decided that I can't care for 3 children on my own. They want to split them up, send Matthew to Catherine's brother in Missouri, Sarah to my sister in Kansas, and Tommy— His voice broke slightly. Tommy to the children's home in Cedar Falls. Oh, Mr. Ward. Anna sank into her chair, her legs suddenly unsteady. Surely there must be some other way. You're their father. You love them. Love doesn't seem to matter much to the charity board, Noel said bitterly. They say a man can't raise children proper without a woman's influence. Say it wouldn't be decent, especially with Sarah coming into her own soon. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mrs. Pemberton made it very clear that a widowed man with children is a burden on the community. Anna had met Mrs. Pemberton, the stern-faced woman who led the charity board with the iron will of a general commanding troops. The woman had made her own opinions about Anna's condition crystal clear during their one unfortunate encounter at the church social. When? Anna asked quietly. They're coming for them day after tomorrow. Say it's better to make the transition quickly before the children get too attached to the idea of staying. Noel's knuckles had gone white where he gripped his hat. Miss James, I can't let that happen. Those children have already lost their mother. I won't let them lose each other too. Anna studied his face, seeing the determination beneath the grief. What are you asking of me, Mr. Ward? I'm asking you to marry me. The words hung in the air between them like smoke, heavy and impossible to take back. Anna felt the blood drain from her face, and for a moment she thought she might faint. Of all the shocking things she'd imagined he might say, this hadn't even crossed her mind. Mr. Ward, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He moved closer, his eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. I know what you're thinking. I know how it sounds. But hear me out. Anna's mind reeled. You just buried your wife this morning. You're not thinking clearly. I buried my wife this morning. He agreed, his voice thick with emotion. And I loved Catherine Ward with every fiber of my being. But she's gone. Miss James and my children are still here. They need a mother and they need one fast, or the charity board will tear them apart, like wolves fighting over a carcass. But Anna gestured helplessly toward her stomach. I'm carrying another man's child. The whole town knows it. How would marrying me solve anything? It would only give Mrs. Pemberton more ammunition against you. Noel's expression softened slightly. Miss James, Anna, may I call you Anna? At her nod, he continued, I don't know the circumstances of your situation, and I'm not asking you to explain them. What I know is that you're a good woman who loves children, and you're facing your own difficulties. Maybe we can help each other. Anna stood abruptly, moving to the window again. Outside, the last of the funeral party was disappearing over the hill, leaving Cemetery Ridge to its eternal quiet. This is madness, Mr. Ward. People would talk. People are already talking, he said quietly. About both of us, about you, about me, about what's going to happen to my children. At least this way we control the narrative. She turned to face him. And what narrative would that be? A man who lost his wife finds solace in helping a woman in need. A teacher who understands children becomes a mother to 3 who need her. It's not a love story, Anna, but it could be a good story, a decent story. Anna sank back into her chair, her mind spinning. The practical part of her, the part that had learned to survive on her own from a young age, immediately began calculating the benefits. A home, respectability, children to love who would love her in return. But the romantic part of her, the part that had once dreamed of a marriage built on love and passion, recoiled at the idea. "You're talking about a marriage of convenience," she said slowly. "I'm talking about a partnership," Noel corrected. "A chance for both of us to build something good out of difficult circumstances. My children need a mother. You need a home and respectability. Your child will need a father's name and protection. It's not romantic, but it's practical." "And what about you?" Anna asked. "What do you get out of this arrangement besides keeping your children?" Noel was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the mountains that surrounded their valley. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I get to honor Catherine's memory by making sure our children grow up together the way she would have wanted. And maybe I get a chance to be useful again, to protect something that matters." Anna felt tears sliding down her cheeks, though she couldn't say exactly why she was crying. For Catherine Ward, perhaps, or for the children who were about to lose everything they'd ever known. For herself and the choices that had led her to this moment. Or maybe for the strange, broken man standing before her, offering her a lifeline wrapped in thorns. "The baby," she said finally. "What about my baby? What would you tell people?" "We'll tell them the truth, that we married quickly because of the circumstances with my children, and that you were already expecting when we wed. Let them draw their own conclusions about timing." Noel's voice grew stronger, more confident. "I'll claim the child as my own. Give it my name, my protection. No one will question a baby born to a married woman." Anna pressed her hands to her belly, imagining her child growing up with the Ward name, with siblings, with a father who chose to love it. The alternative, raising a child alone on a teacher's meager salary, facing the constant whispers and judgment, seemed suddenly unbearable. "This is insane," she whispered. "Maybe," Noel agreed, "but sometimes insane is all we have left." A knock at the door interrupted them, and both Anna and Noel turned as Mrs. Henderson from the mercantile poked her head inside. "Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt," the older woman said, her eyes darting between Anna and Noel with obvious curiosity. "I was just checking to see if you needed anything, dear. Thought you might want some company after this difficult day." "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Henderson." Anna managed, acutely aware of how the scene must look, her sitting in a chair with tears on her cheeks, Noel standing nearby with his hat in his hands, both of them clearly in the middle of an intense conversation. Mrs. Henderson's gaze lingered on Noel. "Mr. Ward, I didn't expect to see you here. Shouldn't you be home with the children?" "Matthew's watching Sarah and Tommy," Noel replied evenly. "I had some business to discuss with Miss James regarding their schooling." "Oh." Mrs. Henderson looked disappointed, clearly hoping for more interesting gossip. "Well, I suppose that's thoughtful of you, thinking of their education at a time like this. Catherine always did say you were a devoted father." "Yes, well, the children's welfare is my primary concern," Noel said, and Anna heard the double meaning in his words. After Mrs. Henderson left with promises to check on Anna again, soon silence fell over the schoolhouse once more. Anna stared at her hands, trying to process everything that had happened in the space of 15 minutes. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Time is what we don't have," Noel replied, but his voice was gentle. "The charity board will be here day after tomorrow. If we're going to do this, we need to do it tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Anna's head snapped up. "You want to get married tomorrow?" "I want to present the charity board with a fait accompli," Noel said grimly. "A married couple already established, already caring for the children. It's harder to argue with something that's already done." Anna stood and walked to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of the well-worn volumes. These books had been her companions, her escape, her window into worlds beyond Pine Ridge. Now she was being asked to step into a new world entirely, one she'd never imagined for herself. "What would you expect of me?" she asked without turning around. "As your wife, I mean. What would be the terms of this partnership?" She heard Noel clear his throat behind her. "You'd have your own room, of course, privacy and respect. I'd expect you to help with the children, naturally teaching them, caring for them, being a mother to them. Managing the household perhaps, though Mrs. Murphy has been helping with cooking and cleaning since Catherine took ill. And you, what would you expect in terms of marital relations?" The silence stretched so long that Anna finally turned to look at him. Noel's face had flushed red and he was staring at his boots. "I loved my wife," he said quietly. "I'm not ready to, that is, I wouldn't expect. Physical intimacy isn't part of this arrangement, Anna. This is about the children, not about replacing Catherine in my bed." Anna nodded, surprised by the mixture of relief and disappointment she felt. "And if in time one of us wanted to, if circumstances changed, then we'd discuss it like adults," Noel said, meeting her eyes again. "But I won't lie to you, I can't imagine wanting anyone that way again. Catherine was everything to me." Anna felt a pang of something that might have been jealousy for a woman she'd respected and admired. What would it be like to be loved that completely, that devastatingly? She'd thought she'd known love once, but looking at Noel's face, she realized she'd only known its shadow. "The children," she said, changing the subject. "How would you explain this to them?" "They've just lost their mother. Now you want to bring a stranger into their home. You're not a stranger to them," Noel pointed out. "You've been their teacher for 2 years. Sarah adores you. She's always quoting something Miss James said at the dinner table. And Tommy still talks about the day you helped him catch fireflies after school." Anna remembered that day, how the little boy had been so sad about something, a fight with his siblings perhaps, or a harsh word from another child. She'd kept him after school and they'd spent an hour in the meadow behind the schoolhouse catching the magical insects in mason jars before releasing them again. "Matthew might be more difficult," Noel continued. "He's at that age where he thinks he should be the man of the house now, but he respects you. They all do. And if they can't accept me, if they resent me for trying to take their mother's place, then we'll deal with that when it happens," Noel said simply. "But I'd rather they resent having a stepmother than lose each other forever." Anna walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a physical thing. Everything she'd planned for her life, everything she'd dreamed of, hung in the balance. "I had other plans," she said softly. Before I found myself in this condition, I was going to save money, maybe go to San Francisco or Denver, teach in a real school, not just a one-room schoolhouse in the mountains, see the ocean. "You could still do those things," Noel said. "Someday, when the children are grown, when circumstances are different. This doesn't have to be forever, Anna, just until what? Until you're ready to love someone again, until the children don't need a mother anymore." Anna shook her head. "You're asking me to give up my dreams for an indefinite period, Mr. Ward, to step into a dead woman's life and pretend it fits." Noel's face crumpled slightly. "I'm asking you to help me save my children," he said, "and I'm offering you what protection and respectability I can. It's not a perfect solution, Anna, but it's the only one I can think of." Anna closed her eyes, trying to imagine her life in 6 months, a year, 5 years. She could see herself teaching the Ward children their letters, tending a garden, rocking her own baby to sleep in the house where Catherine Ward had once lived and loved and died. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it wasn't without its compensations. "If I agreed," she said slowly, "there would have to be conditions." "Name them." "I want to continue teaching, at least until the baby comes and perhaps after, if arrangements can be made. Teaching isn't just what I do, Mr. Ward, it's who I am." "Agreed. The children could use having you close by anyway." "I want my own space in the house, Not just a room, but a place that's mine, where I can have my books, my things, where I can go when I need to be alone. The house is large enough. Catherine had a sewing room that's barely been used. You could make it your own. Anna took a deep breath. And I want honesty. If you're having second thoughts, if you meet someone else, if the arrangement isn't working, I want you to tell me. I won't be trapped in a marriage that's become a prison for both of us. Noel nodded solemnly. The same goes for you. If you find yourself unhappy, if you want to leave, if you need something different, we'll work it out. I'm not looking to chain you to a life you don't want. Anna stood and walked to the window one more time. The afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the mountains, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. In a few hours it would be dark, and she would go home to her small cabin behind the schoolhouse alone with her thoughts and her fears and her unborn child. Tomorrow, if she said yes, she could wake up as Mrs. Noel Ward's stepmother to 3 children, mistress of one of the largest ranches in the valley. It was a transformation that seemed both impossible and inevitable. "The preacher," she said suddenly, "Pastor Williams would never agree to marry us so quickly after Catherine's death. He'd want us to wait a proper mourning period." "Pastor Williams is visiting his sister in Boulder this week," Noel replied, "but Circuit Rider Thompson is passing through tomorrow. He'll perform the ceremony if we ask him to." Anna turned to stare at him. "You've already thought this through completely, haven't you? Every detail, every obstacle." "I've had 3 days to think about nothing else," Noel admitted. "Ever since Dr. Hansen told me there was no hope for Catherine, I've been trying to figure out how to keep my family together. And you decided I was the answer. I decided you were the best answer available," he corrected gently. "Anna, I'm not offering you a romantic fairy tale. I'm offering you a partnership, a chance to build something good together. My children need a mother who will love them and guide them. Your child needs a father who will claim it and protect it. We both need respectability and companionship. It's not love, but it could be something valuable in its own way." Anna pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. Below, she could see the lights beginning to flicker on in the town's scattered houses. Families gathering for dinner, children playing in yards, couples sitting together on front porches. Normal lives, ordinary dreams. "If I say yes," she said quietly, "when would we tell the children tonight? I'll bring them to your cabin after supper. We'll tell them together. And if they refuse to accept me, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But Anna, these children have already lost so much. If there's a chance to keep them together, to give them stability and love, don't you think we owe it to them to try?" Anna thought of Matthew, so serious and responsible beyond his years. Of Sarah, bright and curious and full of questions about the world. Of little Tommy, who still believed in magic and happy endings. Could she be what they needed? Could she step into Catherine Ward's shoes and somehow make them fit? "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Noel admitted. "But sometimes the scariest choices are the ones that lead us where we need to go." Anna turned from the window one final time and looked at this man who was asking her to completely reshape her life in the span of 24 hours. There was no denying he was handsome, even in his grief, tall and broad-shouldered with kind eyes and gentle hands. Catherine Ward had been a lucky woman in many ways, but he was also a stranger, really, despite the casual acquaintance they'd shared through his children's schooling. "All right," she said, the word coming out in a rush before she could change her mind. "Yes, I'll marry you." The relief that flooded Noel's face was so profound that Anna felt her own eyes fill with tears again. He sagged slightly, as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Thank you," he said simply. "Anna, I promise you won't regret this. I'll do everything in my power to make sure you're happy, that you feel valued and respected. You're saving my children's lives." "We're saving each other," Anna corrected. "At least I hope we are." Noel stepped forward and extended his hand. "Partners, then." Anna looked at his outstretched hand for a moment before placing her own smaller one in it. His skin was warm and calloused from years of ranch work, his grip firm but gentle. "Partners," she agreed. As their hands clasped, Anna felt as if she were stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. Tomorrow she would wake up as a different person entirely. Tonight she had to figure out how to say goodbye to the life she'd planned and hello to the one that was about to begin. Outside, the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the valley below, 3 children were about to learn that their world was about to change again. Anna only hoped that this time the change would bring healing instead of heartbreak. The die was cast. There was no turning back now. The cabin behind the schoolhouse had never felt smaller than it did that evening, as Anna waited for Noel to arrive with his children. She'd spent the hour after he left pacing the tiny space, moving her few precious belongings from shelf to shelf, as if rearranging them might somehow make the enormity of her decision feel more manageable. Her hands trembled as she folded and refolded the blue dress Catherine Ward had complimented her on just last month. "That color brings out your eyes, Anna," Catherine had said after church, her own face already bearing the pallor that would soon claim her. "You should wear it more often." Now Anna wondered if she'd ever be able to wear it again without thinking of the woman whose place she was about to take. The knock came just as the mantel clock struck 7. Anna smoothed her skirts, pressed her hands briefly to her cheeks to calm the flush she knew was there, and opened the door to find Noel standing on her small porch with 3 pairs of eyes staring up at her with varying degrees of curiosity and confusion. "Miss James," Matthew said formally, though his voice cracked slightly on her name. At 12, he was caught between boyhood and manhood, his father's strong jaw already emerging from the softness of childhood. "Papa said you wanted to see us." "Please come in," Anna said, stepping back to allow them entry. The cabin, which had always seemed cozy before now, felt cramped with 5 people crowded into its main room. Sarah immediately gravitated toward Anna's bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines with the reverence of a fellow book lover. Tommy hung back near the door, his thumb creeping toward his mouth before he caught himself and shoved his hand behind his back. "Would anyone like some tea?" Anna offered, grateful for something to do with her nervous energy. "I have cookies too. Mrs. Henderson brought them by yesterday." "Yes, please," Sarah said eagerly, then caught her father's look and added more quietly, "if it's not too much trouble." Anna busied herself with the kettle and cups, acutely aware of the tension radiating from Noel. He stood near the fireplace, turning his hat in his hands, with the same nervous gesture she'd observed earlier. The children arranged themselves on her small sofa, Matthew sitting ramrod straight, Sarah perched on the edge, as if ready to flee, and Tommy curled into the corner with his knees drawn up. "This is a nice place," Sarah ventured as Anna served the tea. "It must be peaceful living so close to the school." "It has been," Anna agreed, then caught herself. Had been. Past tense. By tomorrow night she'd be sleeping in the Ward house, in Catherine's room, or perhaps the guest room. They hadn't discussed such details yet. Noel cleared his throat. "Children, Miss James and I have something important to tell you, something that's going to change things for our family." Matthew's back straightened even further if such a thing were possible. "Are we being sent away? Is that what this is about?" "No," Noel said firmly. "This is about making sure that never happens." Anna watched the interplay of emotions across the children's faces. Hope warring with fear, confusion mixing with desperate need for reassurance. These children had already endured so much loss. How could she and Noel ask them to accept yet another upheaval in their young lives? "Miss James has agreed to marry me," Noel continued, his words dropping into the small room like stones into still water. "Tomorrow morning we'll have a small ceremony and she'll become your new mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's teacup rattled against its saucer as her hands began to shake. Matthew's face had gone pale, his dark eyes darting between his father and Anna as if trying to solve an impossible equation. Tommy simply stared, his young mind clearly struggling to process what he'd just heard. "Mama just died," Tommy said finally, his voice so small Anna had to strain to hear it. "She just died, Papa. How can Miss James be our mama now?" Anna's heart broke at the confusion in his voice. She set down her own cup and moved to kneel in front of the sofa, bringing herself to the children's eye level. "Tommy," she said gently, "I could never be your mama. No one could ever replace her or take her place in your hearts. Your mama loved you so much, and that love will always be with you no matter what happens." "Then why are you marrying Papa?" Sarah asked, and there was a sharpness in her voice that hadn't been there before. "If you're not going to be our mama, why are you marrying him?" Anna glanced at Noel, seeking guidance, but his face was carefully neutral. This was her test, she realized. How she answered this question would determine whether these children could ever accept her into their family. "Because sometimes," Anna said carefully, "people come together not just because they love each other, but because they need each other. Your papa needs help taking care of you, and I need a family. We're going to help each other, and hopefully in time, we'll all learn to be happy together." "The charity board," Matthew said suddenly, his voice hard with understanding beyond his years. "They want to split us up. That's what this is about, isn't it?" Noel moved to sit on the arm of the sofa beside his eldest son. "Mrs. Pemberton and the others think a man can't raise 3 children properly on his own. They want to send you to different relatives, scatter you across the country. I won't let that happen, Matthew. I won't lose you too." "So you're using Miss James," Sarah said, and there was an accusation in her tone that made Anna flinch. "You're marrying her just to keep us together." "Sarah," Noel warned, but Anna held up a hand. "She's not wrong," Anna said quietly. "Your father is marrying me partly to keep you together. But Sarah, I'm also marrying him because I want to, because I care about all of you, and because I think we could be good for each other." Sarah stood abruptly, moving to the window. In the lamplight, Anna could see that the girl was crying, though she was trying hard to hide it. "Sarah," Anna said softly, "what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that nothing is ever going to be the same again," Sarah said, without turning around. "First, Mama got sick, then she died, and now you're going to marry Papa, and live in our house, and sleep in Mama's bed, and—" "No," Anna said firmly, rising to her feet. "I will never sleep in your mother's bed. That room was hers and your father's, and it should stay that way. I'll take one of the other rooms, the sewing room perhaps, or the small guest room." Sarah turned around, her eyes red-rimmed but curious. "You won't share Papa's room." Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks, acutely aware of Noel's presence behind her. "This is a different kind of marriage, Sarah. We're becoming partners, not romantic partners. I'll have my own space, my own room. I won't try to replace your mother in any way." "But what about your baby?" Tommy asked suddenly, startling everyone. "Mrs. Murphy said you're going to have a baby. Where will the baby sleep?" Anna's hand moved instinctively to her belly. In all the discussion of practical arrangements, she'd somehow not considered how the children would react to gaining not just a stepmother, but a new sibling as well. "The baby will sleep with me in my room," she said carefully. "At least at first, when babies need their mothers most." "Will it be our brother or sister?" Tommy continued, his natural curiosity overcoming his earlier confusion. Anna looked at Noel, unsure how to answer. They hadn't discussed this aspect of their arrangement in detail. "Yes," Noel said firmly, moving to stand beside Anna. "The baby will be your brother or sister, Tommy. It will be part of our family, just like you and Matthew and Sarah." Matthew had been silent through this exchange, but now he stood and faced his father directly. "Papa, are you sure about this marriage? It's forever. What if you change your mind? What if Miss James changes her mind?" The maturity of the question caught Anna off guard. Matthew was thinking like an adult, considering consequences and contingencies that most 12-year-olds wouldn't even comprehend. "Nothing in life is certain, son," Noel said honestly. "But Miss James and I have talked about this, and we're both committed to making it work for all of us." "But do you love her?" Sarah asked suddenly, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. Noel was quiet for a long moment, and Anna found herself holding her breath. She knew the answer, of course. They'd been clear about the practical nature of their arrangement, but hearing it spoken aloud in front of the children would somehow make it more real. "I loved your mother," Noel said finally, "more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. What Miss James and I have is different. It's built on respect and friendship and a shared desire to take care of you children. That might not be the kind of love you see in storybooks, but it's real and it's good and it's enough." Anna felt something loosen in her chest at his words. He hadn't said he loved her, but he'd said their arrangement was real and good and enough. It was more than she dared to hope for. "What should we call you?" Tommy asked, looking directly at Anna. "After you marry Papa, I mean. Should we call you Mama?" The question hit Anna like a physical blow. She'd expected practical concerns, logistical questions, even resentment. She hadn't expected this innocent inquiry that struck right to the heart of what she was agreeing to become. "What would you like to call me?" she asked gently. Tommy considered this seriously, his small brow furrowed in concentration. "Could we call you Anna Mama, like you're our mama, but you're also still Miss Anna?" Anna felt tears spring to her eyes. "I would be honored if you called me Anna Mama Tommy." "I'm not calling you anything with Mama in it," Sarah said defiantly. "Mama is Mama and she's dead, and I won't pretend otherwise." "That's fine," Anna said quickly. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, Sarah. Anna, Miss Anna, or even just hey, you, if that's what you prefer. I'm not trying to take your mother's place." Matthew had been studying Anna intently throughout this conversation, his dark eyes serious and assessing. Finally, he spoke. "Miss James Anna, I need to know something. Are you going to try to change us? Make us act different or be different because you're going to be living with us?" Anna considered the question carefully. "I hope we'll all grow and change as we get to know each other better. But Matthew, I became a teacher because I believe children should be encouraged to become the best versions of themselves, not forced into someone else's idea of who they should be. I won't try to change who you are." "And if we don't like you?" Sarah asked bluntly. "If we decide we don't want you in our house after all, then we'll work through it together," Anna replied, "like families do. I'm not expecting you to love me right away, Sarah. I'm not even expecting you to like me. But I am hoping that in time we can at least respect each other and maybe even become friends." Tommy had been growing drowsy during the conversation, curled up against the arm of the sofa, with his eyelids drooping. Now he roused himself enough to ask one more question. "Anna Mama, will you still teach us at the school? I mean, as long as I'm able to," Anna promised. "Though when the baby comes, I might need to take some time away. But yes, Tommy, I'll still be your teacher." "Good," he said sleepily. "I like having you as my teacher. You make learning fun." Noel moved to gather Tommy into his arms. "It's time to get you home to bed, little man. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." As Noel lifted his youngest son, Tommy wrapped his arms around his father's neck and whispered something in his ear. Noel's expression softened and he whispered something back that made Tommy nod solemnly. "What did he say?" Sarah asked. "He wanted to know if marrying Anna means we get to stay together forever," Noel replied. "I told him it means we get to stay together for as long as we all want to be a family." Matthew stood and moved toward the door, then paused and turned back to Anna. "Miss James Anna, I want you to know that I understand why you're doing this. For us, I mean. And I want you to know that I'll do my best to help make it work. For Papa and for Sarah and Tommy." Anna felt a surge of affection for this serious, thoughtful boy who was trying so hard to be the man of the family. "Thank you, Matthew. That means more to me than you know." Sarah was the last to leave, lingering by Anna's bookshelf as the others made their way to the door. "Miss James," she said quietly. "Yes, Sarah, I'm not ready to call you Anna Mama, not yet, but I'm glad Papa won't be alone anymore. He's been so sad since Mama got sick, and I think maybe having you around might help him smile again." Anna felt her eyes fill with tears at the unexpected kindness. "Thank you for telling me that, Sarah. It gives me hope." After they left, Anna stood in her doorway watching the small family make their way down the path toward their wagon. Tommy was asleep in his father's arms. Matthew walked beside them with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, and Sarah trailed slightly behind, looking back once to wave at Anna before disappearing into the darkness. Anna closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to process what had just happened. In less than 18 hours, she would be married. She would become a stepmother to 3 children who were still grieving their mother. She would move into a house that still held the ghost of another woman's life. The practical part of her mind immediately began making lists. She needed to pack her belongings, arrange for someone to look after the schoolhouse, prepare lessons for the substitute teacher who would need to take over her classes temporarily. But underneath the practical concerns was a deeper current of emotion that she was almost afraid to examine too closely. She was terrified, certainly, but she was also, she realized, excited. For the first time since she'd discovered her pregnancy, she wasn't facing the future alone. She would have a partner even if their marriage wasn't built on love. She would have children to care for, a home to help manage, a purpose beyond simply surviving day to day. And perhaps most importantly, she would have the chance to give her own child a family, siblings, to grow up with a father willing to claim it as his own, a place in the world where being born outside of wedlock wouldn't matter. Anna moved through her small cabin, touching familiar objects as if memorizing them. The rocking chair where she'd spent countless evenings grading papers and reading. The small table where she'd eaten solitary meals. The narrow bed where she'd lain awake worrying about her future and her baby's future. Tomorrow night she would sleep in a different bed in a different house as a different person entirely. Mrs. Noel Ward, stepmother and wife. The transformation seemed impossible, but then again, the past few months had taught her that life rarely unfolded according to plan. She was folding her nightgowns into her travel case when another knock came at the door. Anna opened it to find Mrs. Henderson standing on her porch, holding a covered basket and wearing an expression of barely contained curiosity. "Anna, dear, I hope you don't mind my stopping by so late. I saw Noel Ward's wagon leaving and thought you might appreciate some company." Anna stepped aside to let the older woman enter, knowing that refusing would only fuel more speculation. Mrs. Henderson was the unofficial gossip clearinghouse for Pine Ridge, and news of Anna's evening visitors would already be making the rounds. "That's very thoughtful of you, Mrs. Henderson. Would you like some tea?" "Don't trouble yourself, dear. I just wanted to check on you. It's been such a difficult day for everyone with poor Catherine's funeral and all." Mrs. Henderson's eyes were sharp as they took in the packed belongings scattered around the cabin. "Going somewhere, are you?" Anna took a deep breath. There was no point in trying to hide what would be common knowledge by tomorrow afternoon anyway. "Actually, Mrs. Henderson, I'm getting married tomorrow morning." The older woman's mouth fell open in a most satisfying way. For perhaps the first time in her life, Mrs. Henderson was speechless. "Married?" she finally managed. "To whom, Anna dear? You haven't been courting anyone that I know of." "To Noel Ward," Anna said simply. If Mrs. Henderson had been speechless before, she was positively stunned now. She sank onto Anna's sofa without invitation, her basket forgotten on the floor beside her. Noel Ward, but his wife was just buried this morning. "Anna, surely, you can't be serious." "I'm quite serious. We'll have a small ceremony tomorrow morning and I'll be moving to the ranch to help care for the children." Mrs. Henderson's face cycled through a series of expressions: shock, disapproval, calculation, and finally a kind of grudging understanding. "The charity board," she said suddenly. "This is about the charity board wanting to split up those children." Anna nodded. "Among other things." "Well," Mrs. Henderson said, settling back against the cushions with the air of someone preparing for a long conversation, "I suppose it makes a kind of sense. Those children do need a mother, and you certainly need, well, you need a husband, don't you, dear?" Anna felt her cheeks burn at the woman's blunt assessment of her situation, but she forced herself to remain calm. We both need what the other can provide. It's a practical arrangement. Practical, Mrs. Henderson repeated thoughtfully. Yes, I suppose it is. And quick thinking, too, getting ahead of Mrs. Pemberton and her committee. That woman's been gunning to break up that family since the day Catherine took ill. Anna was surprised by the approval in the older woman's voice. She'd expected censure, not support. You don't think it's scandalous, the timing, I mean? Mrs. Henderson waved a dismissive hand. Honey, I've lived in these mountains for 40 years. I've seen people do whatever they had to do to survive and protect their families. If marrying Noel Ward keeps those children together and gives you and your baby a good home, then I say it's the smartest thing either of you could do. Thank you, Anna said, surprised by how much the woman's approval meant to her. I was worried about what people would say. Oh, they'll say plenty, Mrs. Henderson assured her. But most of it will blow over once they see how you handle yourself as Mrs. Ward. Actions speak louder than gossip, Anna. You just focus on being a good wife and mother and let the rest of us worry about wagging tongues. After Mrs. Henderson left, promising to spread the word about the wedding in a way that would minimize scandal, Anna finished her packing with a lighter heart. If Mrs. Henderson, the unofficial moral arbiter of Pine Ridge, could approve of her decision, perhaps the rest of the town would come around as well. The night passed slowly, filled with fitful sleep and anxious dreams. Anna woke before dawn to the sound of rain pattering against her windows, and for a moment her heart sank. Rain on a wedding day was supposed to be bad luck, wasn't it? But then she reminded herself that this wasn't a traditional wedding and perhaps different rules applied. She dressed carefully in her best dress, a deep green wool that brought out her eyes and flattered her figure despite her expanding waistline. Catherine Ward had been right about blue being her color, but green had always made Anna feel confident and strong, and today she needed all the confidence she could muster. At precisely 10 o'clock, Noel arrived with the circuit rider, a weathered man named Thompson who performed marriages, baptisms, and funerals throughout the mountain communities. Anna had met him before during his previous visits to Pine Ridge, and she was grateful for his pragmatic, no-nonsense approach to his duties. Miss James, Thompson said, removing his hat as he entered her cabin. Noel's explained the situation to me. I want you to know that I think you're both doing the right thing for those children. Thank you, Anna replied, though her hands were trembling as she reached for her coat. I have to admit, I'm nervous. Wedding nerves are natural, Thompson assured her, even in unusual circumstances like these. The ceremony itself was brief and simple, held in Anna's small cabin with Mrs. Henderson and her husband serving as witnesses. Anna had asked Mrs. Henderson to stand with her, partly out of gratitude for the woman's support, and partly because she had no other close friends in Pine Ridge to fill the role. Do you, Noel Ward, take Anna James to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part? I do, Noel said, his voice steady and sure. Do you, Anna James, take Noel Ward to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part? Anna looked into Noel's eyes, seeing there the same mixture of determination and certainty that she felt in her own heart. They were both taking a leap of faith, trusting that their practical partnership could grow into something good and lasting. I do, she said. The ring Noel slipped onto her finger had belonged to his grandmother, he told her quietly. It was a simple band of gold worn smooth by years of wear, and Anna was touched that he'd chosen to give her something with family history rather than simply purchasing something new. By the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife, Thompson declared. Noel, you may kiss your bride. Anna's breath caught as Noel leaned down to press a gentle, chaste kiss to her lips. It was barely more than a brush of contact, but it sealed their bargain as surely as any legal document. "Mrs. Ward," Noel said softly, and Anna felt a strange thrill at hearing her new name. "Mr. Ward," she replied, managing a smile despite her nervousness. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. "Oh, it's just lovely. Catherine would be so pleased to know the children will be taken care of." After the witnesses left and the circuit rider continued on his way to the next town, Anna and Noel stood alone in the cabin that was no longer her home. Outside, the rain had stopped and weak autumn sunshine was beginning to filter through the clouds. "Well," Noel said, turning his hat nervously in his hands, "I suppose we should get your things loaded and head to the house. The children are waiting to welcome you home." Home. The word had a strange sound to it. Anna looked around the small cabin one last time, memorizing details she'd taken for granted, the way the morning light fell across her desk, the sound the floorboards made when she walked across them, the view of the mountains from her kitchen window. "Ready?" Noel asked gently. Anna picked up her travel case and nodded. "Ready." As they loaded her belongings into Noel's wagon, Anna caught sight of several curtains twitching in nearby windows. Word of the wedding would be all over Pine Ridge by noon, she realized. By evening, the story would have spread to the neighboring ranches and settlements. She was no longer simply Anna James, the schoolteacher with the questionable past. She was Mrs. Noel Ward's stepmother and wife member of one of the most established families in the valley. The transformation was complete, at least on paper. Now came the much harder task of learning to live up to the role she'd agreed to play. The Ward ranch house came into view as they rounded the bend in the road, and Anna felt her stomach clench with nervous anticipation. It was larger than she'd remembered from her few previous visits, a 2-story frame house with a wraparound porch and gingerbread trim that spoke of prosperity and permanence. Catherine Ward had made it beautiful with her flower gardens and carefully tended lawn. Now Anna would be responsible for maintaining that beauty, for making it a home worthy of the family who lived there. 3 figures emerged from the house as the wagon approached: Matthew, Sarah, and Tommy, all dressed in their Sunday best despite the informality of the day. Anna wondered if Noel had told them to dress up for her arrival, or if they'd chosen to do so on their own. "Welcome home, Anna Mama," Tommy called out as Noel helped her down from the wagon, and Anna felt her heart squeeze with sudden, unexpected emotion. Home. Perhaps with time and patience and a great deal of grace, it truly could become that. The first weeks of marriage passed in a blur of small adjustments and careful negotiations. Anna found herself navigating the delicate balance between establishing her place in the household while respecting the memory of the woman who had come before her. Catherine's presence lingered in every corner of the house, in the way the children automatically set 4 places at the table before remembering to add a 5th, in the faded recipe cards tucked behind the sugar canister, in the lavender sachets that still scented the linen closet. Anna had taken the small sewing room as her own, just as she'd promised the children. It faced east, catching the morning light that she'd grown to love during her years at the schoolhouse. Noel had helped her arrange her books on the built-in shelves, and she'd hung her few pictures on the walls, a watercolor of the San Francisco Bay that she'd bought from a traveling artist, a photograph of her parents taken before their deaths, a pressed flower from her first day teaching in Pine Ridge. "It looks nice," Sarah had said one morning, standing in the doorway with obvious curiosity. "Cozy." "Would you like to come in?" Anna had asked, setting down the letter she'd been writing to her former teaching colleague in Denver. Sarah had hesitated, then stepped across the threshold, as if entering sacred ground. "Mama used to sew in here sometimes. She made my blue dress in here, the one with the pearl buttons." "It's a beautiful dress," Anna had replied carefully. "Your mother had wonderful taste." "She did." Sarah had run her fingers along the windowsill where Anna had placed a small vase of late autumn wildflowers. She would have liked what you've done with this room. She always said it had good light but needed someone to appreciate it properly. These small moments of acceptance came gradually, unpredictably. Tommy had taken to following Anna around the house like a curious puppy, chattering about his day at school and asking endless questions about the baby growing in her belly. Matthew remained politely distant but helpful, carrying her books when she walked to the schoolhouse, chopping extra firewood without being asked, treating her with the careful courtesy of a young gentleman. It was Sarah who proved the most complex, alternating between grudging acceptance and fierce loyalty to her mother's memory. She would help Anna with the cooking one day, then refuse to speak to her the next. Anna learned to read the signs the way Sarah's shoulders set when she was feeling particularly protective of Catherine's legacy, the softness that crept into her voice when she forgot to maintain her emotional distance. The town's reaction to their marriage had been mixed, but gradually settling into acceptance. Mrs. Pemberton had been notably silent since the wedding, perhaps recognizing that her campaign to separate the Ward children had been effectively neutralized. The other women of Pine Ridge watched Anna carefully, looking for signs of how she would handle her new role, but their initial suspicion was giving way to cautious approval. "You're doing well," Mrs. Henderson had told her after church one Sunday. "The children look happy, and Noel, well, he's smiling again. That counts for something." Anna had begun to hope that perhaps their unconventional arrangement might actually work when the first real test came on a crisp November morning. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, her hands red with cold, despite her gloves, when she spotted a rider approaching at considerable speed. The man wore a dark suit and rode with the purposeful bearing of someone carrying official business. "Noel," she called toward the barn where her husband was repairing a broken gate. Something about the rider's urgency set her nerves on edge. Noel emerged from the barn, took one look at the approaching horseman, and his face went grim. "Go inside, Anna. Get the children." "What's wrong?" "That's Harold Crenshaw. He works for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. Nothing good ever comes of his visits." Anna's blood ran cold as she remembered the stories she'd heard about the railroad's aggressive expansion through the territory. Small ranchers and farmers had been losing their land to railroad companies armed with lawyers, surveyors, and sometimes questionable legal documents. She hurried into the house, calling for the children. "Matthew, Sarah, Tommy, come inside, please." "What's happening?" Matthew asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway with Sarah close behind him. "A man's come to see your father. Just stay inside until we know what he wants." Through the front window, Anna watched as Crenshaw dismounted and approached Noel with a leather satchel in his hands. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in her husband's posture as the two men began to talk. "Is Papa in trouble?" Tommy asked, pressing his face against the window beside her. "I don't know," Anna replied honestly, though her heart was beginning to race. "Let's just wait and see." The conversation outside grew more animated, with Crenshaw gesturing emphatically and Noel shaking his head repeatedly. Finally, the railroad man handed Noel a set of papers and remounted his horse, riding away as quickly as he'd come. Noel stood in the yard for a long moment, staring down at the documents in his hands. When he finally came inside, his face was ashen. "What did he want?" Anna asked immediately. Noel sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the papers crumpled in his fist. "He says the railroad owns our land. Says Catherine signed it over as collateral for a loan 3 years ago, and now they're calling it in." "That's impossible," Matthew said, his voice cracking with indignation. "Mama would never have done such a thing without telling you." "She was trying to help," Noel said quietly, his voice hollow. "When I was laid up with the broken leg, when we couldn't afford the doctor bills. She must have been desperate." Anna felt the room spinning around her. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd built together in these past weeks, suddenly felt as fragile as spun glass. "What kind of proof do they have?" Noel smoothed out the papers with shaking hands. A promissory note, Catherine's signature, the deed to the ranch as collateral. "Let me see," Anna said, moving to stand behind his chair. The documents looked official enough, heavy paper, official seals, legal language that made her head spin, but something about Catherine's signature nagged at her memory. "This doesn't look right," she said slowly. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, crowding closer. Anna pointed to the signature at the bottom of the promissory note. "I've seen your mother's handwriting before. She wrote notes to me about your schoolwork. Remember, this signature, it's similar but not quite right. The C in Catherine is formed differently, and she always made a little flourish on the W in Ward. This signature doesn't have that flourish." Noel looked up at her with something that might have been hope. "You really think it's not her signature? I think we need to investigate before we accept this as legitimate." Anna's mind was already racing ahead, thinking of ways to verify the documents. "When did they say this loan was made?" "June of 1882. Noel replied, scanning the papers again. "But that doesn't make sense," Matthew said suddenly. "June of 1882 was when Mama was so sick with the baby she lost. She barely left her bed for 2 months. How could she have gone to Denver to sign legal papers?" Anna felt a surge of fierce protectiveness for this family that had become hers. "We need to fight this, Noel. We can't just roll over and let them take everything." "Fight the railroad," Noel laughed bitterly. "Anna, they have lawyers, money, influence. What do we have? We have the truth," Anna said firmly, "and we have each other." Over the next few days, the threat of losing the ranch cast a shadow over everything. Noel threw himself into ranch work with desperate intensity, as if he could somehow prove his ownership through sheer force of labor. The children were unusually quiet, sensing the adults' anxiety, even when Anna and Noel tried to shield them from the worst of their fears. Anna found herself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling of her small room and trying to think of ways to challenge the railroad's claim. She'd grown up in a family that believed in the power of education and documentation, and something about the railroad's case felt wrong to her. "I want to go to the county courthouse," she told Noel one morning over breakfast, "to look at the records, see if there's anything that doesn't match up." "Anna, you're pregnant. You shouldn't be making long trips over rough roads." "I'm pregnant, not an invalid," she replied firmly. "And if we don't do something soon, we might not have a home to bring this baby to." Noel studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, we'll go together. Mrs. Murphy can watch the children." The trip to Cedar Falls took most of the day, bouncing over rutted mountain roads in the wagon. Anna's back ached by the time they reached the county seat, but her determination had only grown stronger during the long journey. The courthouse was an imposing brick building that dominated the small town's main square. Inside, dusty corridors led to offices filled with ledgers and filing cabinets that held the legal history of the entire county. "We'd like to examine the property records for the Ward Ranch in Pine Ridge," Anna told the clerk, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and a perpetually harried expression. "What years?" he asked, not looking up from his ledger. 1880 to 1885, Anna replied. "We're particularly interested in any transactions from 1882. The clerk led them to a back room lined with massive volumes. "Ward Ranch, let me see." He pulled several heavy books from the shelves and dropped them onto a scarred wooden table. "These should have what you're looking for." Anna dove into the records with the intensity of a scholar, running her finger down column after column of entries. Property transfers, tax payments, liens, mortgages, the legal life of the county laid out in careful script. "Here," she said, suddenly pointing to an entry from June 1882. "This shows the promissory note just like the railroad claimed, but look at this." Noel leaned over her shoulder to see what she'd found. "What am I looking at? The witness signatures. According to territorial law, any document transferring property rights has to be witnessed by at least 2 people and notarized. This document only has 1 witness signature, and there's no notary seal." Noel's eyes widened. "Does that mean it's not legal?" It means it's questionable at best. Anna flipped through more pages, her excitement growing. And look at that, there's no record of Catherine ever appearing before a notary in Cedar Falls in 1882. If she'd really signed this document, there should be a record of it. They spent another hour poring over the records, building their case piece by piece. The more Anna studied the documents, the more convinced she became that the railroad's claim was fraudulent. "We need to get back to Pine Ridge," she said, finally gathering up her notes. "We need to talk to people who knew Catherine in 1882, people who can testify about her condition during that time." The trip home seemed shorter, buoyed by hope and determination. Anna's mind was already spinning with plans: who to contact, what evidence to gather, how to present their case. "Anna," Noel said as their house came into view, "I want you to know what you did today, the way you fought for us. Catherine would have been proud of you." Anna felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected comparison. "I'm not trying to be Catherine. I know you're being yourself, and that's exactly what this family needs." But their newfound hope was short-lived. The next morning brought another visitor, this time Mrs. Pemberton herself, accompanied by two men Anna didn't recognize. "Mr. Ward," Mrs. Pemberton said without preamble, "I trust you've had time to consider your situation. Given the railroad's claim on your property, the charity board feels it's imperative that we make alternate arrangements for the children immediately." Anna felt her world tilt sideways. "Mrs. Pemberton, we're contesting the railroad's claim. There are serious questions about the validity of their documents." "That's neither here nor there," Mrs. Pemberton replied dismissively. "Even if you somehow manage to keep this property, recent events have shown that Mr. Ward is clearly unable to provide stable security for these children. First, his wife dies, then he enters into a hasty marriage of convenience, and now he's facing legal challenges that could leave him penniless. The children deserve better. The children deserve to stay with their father," Anna said, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. "The children deserve proper care from suitable guardians," Mrs. Pemberton shot back. "Not some makeshift arrangement between a desperate widower and a fallen woman." The words hit Anna like a physical blow, but before she could respond, Sarah's voice cut across the tension. "Don't you dare talk about Anna that way." Everyone turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, her young face blazing with indignation. Matthew and Tommy flanked her, presenting a united front that made Anna's heart swell with unexpected pride. "Sarah, children, go back inside," Noel said, but Sarah shook her head defiantly. "No, Papa, I want to say something." She stepped forward, her chin raised with determination that reminded Anna painfully of Catherine. "Mrs. Pemberton, Anna isn't a fallen woman. She's our family now. She takes care of us and teaches us and makes Papa smile again. And if you try to take us away from her and Papa, we'll fight you." "A child's attachment is understandable but irrelevant," Mrs. Pemberton said coldly. "We're acting in your best interests, whether you understand it or not." "Our best interests." Matthew stepped forward, his young voice cracking with emotion. "Our best interest is staying together. Anna helps Tommy with his arithmetic and listens to Sarah's stories and doesn't try to replace Mama, but still makes us feel like we have a family again. How is breaking us apart in our best interest?" Anna felt tears streaming down her face as she watched these children. Her children now defend their fragile new family with such fierce loyalty. "The decision has been made," Mrs. Pemberton announced. "Mr. Henderson here represents your uncle in Missouri, Matthew. He'll be taking you with him today. Sarah, Mrs. Collins, will escort you to your aunt in Kansas. And Tommy—" "No!" Tommy burst into tears, running to throw his arms around Anna's waist. "I don't want to go. I want to stay with Anna, Mama, and Papa." Anna knelt down to wrap her arms around the sobbing child, her own tears falling into his hair. "Tommy, sweetheart, the railroad men said they're putting padlocks on the barn tonight," one of Mrs. Pemberton's companions said. "Best to get the children settled before things get more complicated." "Over my dead body," Noel said, his voice deadly quiet. He moved to stand protectively in front of his family, and Anna saw something fierce and dangerous in his eyes that she'd never seen before. "Those are my children, and this is my land. You want them, you'll have to go through me." "Mr. Irwood, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be," Miss Pemberton said. "Think of what's best for the children." "I am thinking of the children," Noel replied, "which is why they're staying here." Anna rose to her feet, still holding Tommy's hand. An idea was forming in her mind, desperate perhaps, but their situation called for desperate measures. "Mrs. Pemberton," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart, "give us 1 week. I beg your pardon. 1 week to prove that the railroad's claim is fraudulent and that this family should stay together. If we can't produce evidence that satisfies the territorial court, then we'll discuss the children's placement." Mrs. Pemberton's eyes narrowed. "And why would we agree to such a delay? Because it's the right thing to do," Anna said simply. "These children have already lost their mother. Don't make them lose everything else without at least giving their father a chance to fight for them." The older woman studied Anna's face for a long moment, perhaps seeing something there that gave her pause. Finally, she nodded curtly. 1 week, Mrs. Ward. But if you can't produce compelling evidence by then, these children will be placed in more suitable homes, and there will be no further discussion." After the charity board members left, the family huddled together in the kitchen, still shaking from the confrontation. Anna made tea with hands that trembled only slightly, while Noel stared out the window, as if watching for more unwelcome visitors. "Anna," Sarah said quietly, "what you said to Mrs. Pemberton, can you really prove the railroad is lying?" Anna set down her teacup and looked around at the 3 young faces watching her with such trust and hope. A week ago she'd been a single woman with nothing to lose but her reputation. Now she was fighting for a family, a home, a future that included all of them. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'm going to try. We're all going to try. Together." "What do we need to do?" Matthew asked, and Anna heard the determination in his voice that matched her own. "We need to find people who knew your mother in 1882, people who can testify about her condition, her whereabouts, her ability to travel to Denver. We need to build a case that proves she couldn't have signed those documents." "Dr. Hansen," Tommy said suddenly, "Dr. Hansen took care of Mama when she was sick with the baby. He would remember." "That's perfect, Tommy." Anna felt the first stirring of real hope. Who else would remember that time? "Mrs. Murphy," Sarah offered. "She helped take care of us while Mama was bedridden." "The midwife," Noel added, his voice growing stronger. "Mrs. Fletcher came twice a week during Catherine's confinement. She'd remember the dates." Anna pulled out a piece of paper and began making a list. "We'll need to get sworn statements from all of them, and we'll need to get back to the courthouse to document the discrepancies in the railroad's paperwork." "Anna," Noel said quietly, "even if we prove the documents are fraudulent, the railroad won't just give up. They have lawyers, political connections. They might find other ways to take the land." "Then we'll fight those too," Anna replied firmly. "One battle at a time." That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Anna sat in her small room, working by lamplight. She was preparing questions for the witnesses they'd interview, organizing the evidence they'd gathered, building the foundation of their legal challenge. A soft knock at her door interrupted her work. "Come in." Noel entered, carrying a cup of tea. "Thought you might need this." "Thank you." Anna accepted the cup gratefully, realizing she'd been working for hours without a break. Noel sat down in the chair opposite her desk, his eyes taking in the papers scattered across its surface. "Anna, I need to say something. What you're doing, the way you're fighting for us. I know this isn't what you signed up for when you agreed to marry me." Anna set down her pen and looked at him. In the lamplight, she could see the exhaustion in his face, but also something else, a determination that matched her own. "Actually," she said softly, "I think it's exactly what I signed up for. You asked me to help you keep your family together. That's what I'm doing. But the risk. If we lose, you could lose everything too. Your reputation, your home, your future. Noel, Anna said, leaning forward in her chair. 3 weeks ago, my future looked pretty bleak. Unwed mother, small-town scandal, uncertain prospects. Now I have children who call me Anna Mama, a husband who respects me, and a chance to fight for something that matters. Even if we lose, I'm already ahead of where I started. Noelle was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. You really mean that? I really do. Catherine used to say that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as disasters, he said quietly. I think she would have liked you, Anna. Really liked you. Anna felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. I hope so. I would have liked to know her better. She would have been proud of what you're doing for her children, for our children. Our children. The words sent a little thrill through Anna's heart. Somewhere in the past few weeks, without her even realizing it, the Ward children had truly become hers. Not because she was trying to replace their mother, but because she'd found her own place in their lives. We should get some sleep, Noel said, rising from his chair. Tomorrow we start gathering our evidence. Noel, Anna called as he reached the door. Thank you for trusting me with this, for letting me fight for them. Thank you for wanting to, he replied simply. After he left, Anna extinguished her lamp and prepared for bed. Outside her window, the November wind whistled through the bare branches of the cottonwoods that lined the creek. In 6 days, Mrs. Pemberton would return, expecting either proof of their claims or the surrender of the children. Anna placed her hand over her growing belly, feeling the first faint stirrings of movement from the baby inside. This child would grow up knowing its older siblings playing in these rooms, learning to ride horses in these pastures. If Anna had anything to say about it, this baby would never know what it felt like to be separated from the people it loved. The battle for their family was just beginning, but Anna Ward was ready to fight with everything she had. The scared, uncertain woman who had accepted Noel's proposal 3 weeks ago was gone, replaced by someone stronger, fiercer, more determined than she'd ever imagined she could be. Tomorrow they would begin building their case. Tomorrow they would start the fight to save everything that mattered. But tonight, Anna Ward went to sleep in her own room in her own house, surrounded by her family. And for now, that was enough. The dawn of their first day of evidence gathering came gray and bitter cold, with frost covering the grass like scattered diamonds. Anna dressed quickly, her breath visible in the chill air of her small room. Through her window, she could see Noel already moving about the barn, his shoulders set with the same determination that had carried her through the sleepless night. Over breakfast, they laid out their strategy. The children would attend school as usual. Anna insisted on maintaining normalcy for them, despite the crisis, while she and Noel visited potential witnesses. They would start with Dr. Hansen, whose medical records could provide the most concrete evidence of Catherine's condition during the critical time period. I want to help, Matthew said, his young face earnest as he pushed eggs around his plate. After school, I mean. I remember things about Mama being sick. I remember dates. Your testimony will be important, Anna assured him. But right now, the most helpful thing you can do is take care of Sarah and Tommy. Keep them calm, keep them hopeful. Sarah looked up from her untouched breakfast. Anna, what if the grown-ups don't believe us? What if they think kids don't remember things right? Anna reached across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. Then we'll make sure we have so much evidence from adults that it won't matter. But Sarah, your memories matter too. All of your memories matter. Dr. Hansen's office occupied the ground floor of his house on the edge of Pine Ridge, a tidy building that smelled of carbolic acid and dried herbs. The elderly physician greeted them with the weary kindness of a man who had delivered most of the town's children and seen too many of their parents to early graves. Noel, Anna, he said, settling behind his desk with obvious curiosity. I heard about your marriage. Under the circumstances, it seems like a sensible arrangement. Dr. Hansen, Anna began, we need your help with something. It's about Catherine and the summer of 1882. The doctor's weathered face grew thoughtful. That was a difficult time. Catherine lost the baby in June, as I recall. Spent nearly 3 months on bed rest afterward. We need documentation of that, Noel said, leaning forward. Dates, conditions, anything you recorded about her health and mobility during that period. Dr. Hansen's eyebrows rose slightly. May I ask why? Anna explained about the railroad's claim and the suspicious promissory note allegedly signed by Catherine in Denver during her confinement. As she spoke, she watched the doctor's expression grow increasingly grim. That's impossible, he said finally. Catherine couldn't have traveled to the end of your lane, much less to Denver. She was confined to bed from early June until September on my strict orders. Any journey of that nature could have killed her. Would you be willing to testify to that? Anna asked. In court, if necessary. Absolutely. Dr. Hansen pulled out a leather-bound ledger and began flipping through pages. I keep detailed records of all my patients. Here, June 15th, 1882. Mrs. Catherine Ward miscarriage at 4 months severe hemorrhaging, prescribed complete bed rest for minimum 12 weeks. I visited her 3 times a week until August. Anna felt a surge of triumph as the doctor copied the relevant entries onto official letterhead. This was exactly the kind of concrete evidence they needed. Their next stop was the Fletcher farmstead, where the midwife lived with her daughter's family. Mrs. Fletcher was a sturdy woman in her 60s who had assisted at more births than anyone else in the county. She remembered Catherine's case vividly. Poor dear, she said, settling into her rocking chair as Anna and Noel explained their visit. Lost that baby so late in the pregnancy and nearly lost her own life in the process. I stayed with her for 3 days straight, didn't dare leave her side. Mrs. Fletcher, Anna said carefully, the railroad company claims Catherine signed legal documents in Denver in June of 1882. Given her condition, would that have been possible? The midwife's face darkened. Absolutely not. That woman couldn't sit up without fainting, much less travel. Whoever's claiming she signed papers in Denver is either mistaken or lying. Would you be willing to put that in writing? I'd be willing to shout it from the church steeple if it would help you folks, Mrs. Fletcher declared. Catherine Ward was a good woman, and those children deserved to stay with their father. By afternoon, they had collected statements from 5 witnesses, all corroborating the same basic facts. Catherine had been bedridden and unable to travel during the entire period when she allegedly signed the railroad documents. Anna felt a growing confidence as their case took shape. Their final visit of the day was to Mrs. Murphy, the housekeeper, who had helped care for the Ward family during Catherine's illness. The Irish woman greeted them at her small cottage with flour-dusted hands and worried eyes. I heard about the railroad's claims, she said without preamble. It's nonsense, pure and simple. Mrs. Catherine never left that house from June to September. I was there every day, cooking and cleaning and watching over those children. Mrs. Murphy, Noel said, did Catherine ever mention anything about loans or legal documents? Any financial worries? The housekeeper's face grew troubled. She was worried about money, that's true enough. Your broken leg meant lost wages and the doctor bills were mounting. But she never said anything about signing papers or using the ranch as collateral. If she'd done such a thing, she would have been beside herself with worry. Catherine couldn't keep a secret to save her life. Anna exchanged glances with Noel. This detail felt significant. Catherine's inability to keep secrets suggested that any major financial decisions would have been discussed with her husband. There's something else, Mrs. Murphy continued. I remember her trying to write a letter to her sister in July asking for a small loan to tide you over. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. I had to help her finish it. There's no way she could have signed official documents, even if she'd been well enough to travel. As they rode home in the gathering dusk, Anna felt cautiously optimistic. Their evidence was strong, their witnesses credible, but she also knew that proving their case was only half the battle. They still had to present it effectively and overcome whatever resources the railroad would deploy against them. "Tomorrow, we go back to the courthouse," she said. "I want to examine those documents more carefully, see if there are other discrepancies we missed." "Anna," Noel said quietly, "I keep thinking about what Mrs. Murphy said, about Catherine trying to write that letter. If her hands were shaking from weakness, and if the signature on the railroad document is forged, then the forger might not have known about her condition," Anna finished. "The signature might be too steady, too confident." "Exactly." Noel's voice carried new excitement. "If we can prove the signature itself is fraudulent, not just that Catherine couldn't have been there to sign it, then we have them," Anna said. "Then we really have them." The next morning brought an unexpected complication. Anna woke to find Tommy burning with fever, his small body shaking with chills despite the warm quilts piled on his bed. Hansen diagnosed influenza and prescribed bed rest, but Anna couldn't bring herself to leave the sick child. "You go to the courthouse," she told Noel. "I'll stay with Tommy." "Anna, we're running out of time. We need to examine those documents." "We also need to take care of our son," Anna said firmly, the word "our" slipping out naturally. "Tommy needs someone here, and the other children will need reassurance when they come home from school." Noel studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. I'll handle the courthouse research. You handle our family." Anna spent the day at Tommy's bedside, cooling his fever with damp cloths and reading to him when he was lucid enough to listen. Matthew and Sarah hovered anxiously when they returned from school, and Anna found herself juggling the roles of nurse, stepmother, and investigator with increasing confidence. "Is Tommy going to be all right?" Sarah asked, her young face creased with worry. "Dr. Hansen says the fever should break soon," Anna assured her, "but he needs rest and quiet. Can you help me by keeping an eye on him while I prepare dinner?" "Of course." Sarah settled into the chair beside Tommy's bed with a book of fairy tales. "I'll read to him like Mama used to do when we were sick." Anna paused in the doorway, watching this scene of sisterly devotion. A month ago, she'd been an outsider looking in on this family's grief. Now she was woven into the fabric of their daily life, trusted with their fears and hopes and small, precious moments. Noel returned from Cedar Falls just as Anna was serving dinner. His expression grim but determined, he waited until the children were in bed before sharing what he'd discovered. "The signature is definitely forged," he said, spreading the photocopies he'd made across the kitchen table. "Look at this. I found 3 other examples of Catherine's signature in the courthouse records. Property transfers from when we bought the ranch, tax documents, her will. They're all consistent with each other, but different from the railroad document." Anna bent over the papers, comparing the signatures with the eye of someone who had spent years grading schoolwork and recognizing individual handwriting patterns. "The slant is wrong," she said. "And look at the W in Ward. Catherine always made that distinctive flourish, but the forged signature doesn't have it." "There's more," Noel continued. "I talked to the clerk about the notary seal on the document. He says it's supposed to be a distinctive stamp, but the one on the railroad paper is just ink. No raised impression, no official seal." Anna felt her excitement building. "So we have medical testimony that Catherine couldn't travel, witness statements that she never left the house, and now physical evidence that the signature is forged and the notarization is fake. It should be enough," Noel said, but his voice carried uncertainty. "But Anna, I also heard some troubling news in town. The railroad has hired Morrison and Associates from Denver. They're the most expensive law firm in the territory." Anna's heart sank. Morrison and Associates had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and political connections that reached all the way to the territorial capital. What does that mean for us? It means they're taking this seriously. It means they're not going to roll over just because we have evidence. And it means— Noel paused, his face troubled. It means they might try to discredit us personally rather than address the evidence." "What do you mean?" "I mean they might attack our marriage, your reputation, my fitness as a father. If they can't defend their documents, they might try to convince the court that the children should be removed, regardless of who owns the land." Anna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November cold. She'd been so focused on proving the railroad's fraud that she hadn't considered how vulnerable their unconventional family might be to legal attack. "Then we'll have to be ready for that too," she said finally. "We'll have to prove that we're not just fighting for the land, but that we're a real family worth preserving." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Anna and Noel worked tirelessly to organize their evidence, contact witnesses, and prepare for what was shaping up to be a very public confrontation. The whole town was talking about the case, with opinions divided between those who supported the Ward family and those who thought the railroad's arrival might bring prosperity to the valley. Tommy's fever broke on the 3rd day, leaving him weak but lucid. Anna was reading to him when Sarah burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Anna, Papa, you need to come see this." They hurried to the front window where a surprising sight greeted them. A small crowd had gathered in their front yard. Mrs. Henderson, the baker, Mr. Schmidt, several neighboring ranchers, and even old Mr. Paulson from the general store. They carried tools and looked purposeful. "What's going on?" Anna asked as they stepped onto the porch. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward as the group's apparent spokesperson. "We heard the railroad men might try to take your barn tomorrow. Put those padlocks on before the hearing. We decided that if they want to lock up Ward property, they'll have to go through us first." "We're here to help with the harvest," added Jake Morrison, one of their nearest neighbors. "Figure if the barn's full of community property, grain, and tools that belong to all of us, it'll be harder for them to claim it." Anna felt tears spring to her eyes as she watched these people, some of whom had been critical of her marriage just weeks before, rallying to support their family. It was a demonstration of community solidarity that spoke louder than any legal argument. "Thank you," Noel said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you. This means more than you know." "We look after our own in Pine Ridge," Mrs. Henderson declared, "and the Ward family belongs here." The impromptu barn raising, or rather barn filling, continued throughout the afternoon. Neighbors brought grain, tools, equipment, and supplies, creating a complex web of shared ownership that would make any attempt to seize the building legally complicated. Anna provided coffee and sandwiches, marveling at how quickly their crisis had become the community's cause. "Anna," Sarah said quietly, as they watched the activity from the kitchen window, "I'm sorry I was mean to you at first, about marrying Papa and coming to live with us." Anna turned to study the girl's earnest face. "You weren't mean, Sarah. You were protecting your mother's memory and your family. That took courage. But I understand now," Sarah continued. "What you and Papa have, it's not the same as what he had with Mama. But it's still real, it's still family." Anna knelt down to pull Sarah into a gentle hug. "Thank you for saying that. It means everything to me." "Anna, Mama," Tommy called from his bed. "When is the baby going to come?" "Not for a few more months, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because I want to teach it how to catch fireflies like you taught me." Anna felt her heart swell with love for this precocious, sweet-natured boy who had accepted her so completely into his world. "I think the baby would love that very much." As evening fell and the neighbors departed, Anna and Noel stood together on their porch, watching the lights flicker on in the valley below. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation they'd been preparing for, a hearing before the territorial magistrate that would determine not just the ownership of their land, but the future of their family. "Are you ready?" Noel asked quietly. Anna placed her hand over her growing belly, thinking of the child who would be born into whatever family structure emerged from tomorrow's battle. She thought of Tommy's fever finally breaking, of Sarah's grudging acceptance, turning into genuine affection, of Matthew's grave determination to protect his siblings. She thought of the community that had rallied to their defense and the evidence they'd painstakingly gathered to prove their case. "I'm ready," she said. "We're ready." The hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning in the Pine Ridge Town Hall, a modest building that served double duty as courthouse and community center. By 9:30, every seat was filled, and people stood along the walls and crowded near the doorway. Word had spread throughout the valley, and it seemed like half the county had come to witness the showdown between the Ward family and the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. Anna wore her best dress, the blue wool that Catherine had once complimented, and had arranged her hair in a simple but elegant style. She wanted to project respectability and competence to counter any attempts to portray her as an opportunistic outsider. Beside her, Noel wore his Sunday suit and the grim expression of a man prepared to fight for everything he held dear. The children sat in the front row with Mrs. Henderson, who had volunteered to watch them during the proceedings. Anna caught Tommy's eye and smiled reassuringly, though her stomach was churning with nervous energy. Magistrate William Crawford called the hearing to order promptly at 10. A no-nonsense man with steel gray hair and keen eyes, Crawford had a reputation for fairness and an impatience with legal maneuvering. Anna hoped that would work in their favor. "This hearing will determine the validity of a promissory note and property deed allegedly signed by the late Catherine Ward in June of 1882, Crawford announced. "The Denver and Rio Grande Railroad Company claims ownership of the Ward Ranch based on these documents. Mr. and Mrs. Ward contest that claim. Mr. Harrison, you may present the railroad's case." James Harrison rose from the plaintiff's table, a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit whose very presence spoke of big-city legal sophistication. Anna felt a moment of intimidation before reminding herself that expensive suits didn't change the facts. "Your Honor," Harrison began, "this is a simple matter of contract law. Mrs. Catherine Ward borrowed money from our client using her property as collateral. The loan terms were clear, the documents properly executed. When the loan matured and wasn't repaid, ownership of the property reverted to the railroad. The current occupants, while perhaps sympathetic figures, have no legal claim to the land." Harrison presented his evidence with smooth efficiency: the promissory note, the property deed, documentation of the loan's maturity. He painted a picture of a straightforward business transaction that the Wards were now trying to escape through legal technicalities. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Harrison continued, "even if there were irregularities in the original documentation, which we firmly dispute, the current situation with the Ward family raises serious questions about the children's welfare. Mr. Ward's hasty marriage to a woman of questionable reputation, the family's financial instability, and their inability to provide secure housing all suggest that the children would be better served by alternative arrangements." Anna felt her face burn with anger at the casual assassination of her character, but Noel's hand on her arm reminded her to stay calm. They had anticipated this line of attack. When Crawford called for the defense's case, Anna rose with Noel. They had agreed that she would present the evidence while he handled the witnesses, a division of labor that played to their respective strengths. "Your Honor." Anna began, her voice clear and steady, despite her nervousness. "The railroad's case rests entirely on documents that are fraudulent. We can prove that Mrs. Catherine Ward could not possibly have signed these papers, and furthermore that the signatures themselves are forgeries." Anna methodically presented their evidence: Dr. Hansen's medical records, the witness statements, the comparative analysis of Catherine's authentic signatures. She watched Crawford's expression grow increasingly interested as the weight of their documentation became clear. "The medical evidence alone is conclusive," Anna continued. "Mrs. Ward was confined to bed rest for the entire period in question. Multiple witnesses, including her doctor, can testify that she never left her home, much less traveled to Denver to sign legal documents." "Objection," Harrison interjected. Medical opinions from 3 years ago can hardly be considered reliable. Overruled, Crawford said. Contemporary medical records carry significant weight in determining historical facts. Anna felt a surge of confidence at the magistrate's ruling. She continued with the signature analysis using enlarged copies to demonstrate the clear differences between Catherine's authentic handwriting and the forged document. Finally, Your Honor, the railroad's document lacks proper notarization. The seal is ink rather than an official stamp, and there's no record of Mrs. Ward appearing before a notary in Denver or anywhere else during the relevant time period. When Anna finished her presentation, Noel began calling their witnesses. Dr. Hansen took the stand first, his weathered hands steady as he swore to tell the truth. Dr. Noel said, "In your professional opinion, could Mrs. Catherine Ward have traveled to Denver in June of 1882? Absolutely not," Dr. Hansen replied firmly. She was suffering from severe complications following a miscarriage. Any attempt to travel would have been life-threatening. I specifically ordered complete bed rest, and I monitored her condition 3 times weekly to ensure compliance. And in your observation, was she physically capable of signing legal documents during this period? For the first month, she could barely hold a cup of water, much less a pen. Even later, when her strength began to return, her hands trembled from weakness. The signature on this railroad document shows none of the shakiness I would expect from someone in her condition. Harrison's cross-examination was aggressive but largely ineffective. He tried to suggest that Dr. Hansen's memory might be faulty after 3 years, but the doctor's detailed medical records made that line of attack futile. Mrs. Fletcher testified next, her simple, direct manner contrasting sharply with Harrison's polished presentation. "I've delivered babies and tended sick women for 40 years, she said. "I know when someone's too ill to travel, and Catherine Ward was in no condition to go anywhere for months." Mrs. Murphy followed her Irish accent thick with emotion as she described caring for the Ward family during Catherine's illness. "She was worried sick about money, that's true enough, but she never mentioned signing any papers or using the ranch as collateral. Catherine couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. If she'd done such a thing, she would have been confessing it to me within the day." Harrison's attempts to discredit the witnesses fell flat. These were respected members of the community with no apparent motive to lie, and their testimony was consistent and compelling. But it was Matthew's testimony that proved most powerful. Anna hadn't planned to call him as a witness, but when Harrison suggested that the children might be better off separated from their unstable family situation, Crawford allowed Matthew to speak on his own behalf. "Your Honor," Matthew said, his young voice clear and strong, "I'm 12 years old, and I remember the summer when Mama was so sick. I remember taking care of Sarah and Tommy while Papa worked extra hours to pay for medicine. I remember Mama crying because she was so worried about money, and I remember her trying to write a letter to ask Aunt Margaret for help." Matthew paused, looking directly at Harrison. "If Mama had signed papers giving away our ranch, she would have told Papa. She would have told us. She wouldn't have been crying about money if she'd already solved the problem, and she definitely wouldn't have been asking Aunt Margaret for $20 if she'd just borrowed thousands from the railroad." The logic of a 12-year-old boy cut through Harrison's sophisticated legal arguments like a knife. Anna saw several jury members Crawford had impaneled, an advisory jury of local citizens, nodding in agreement. Harrison's closing argument focused on legal technicalities and procedural questions, but Anna could tell he was fighting a losing battle. The evidence against the railroad's case was simply too overwhelming. When Anna rose for her closing statement, she felt the weight of everything they'd fought for settling on her shoulders. This was her moment to tie together all the evidence, all the testimony, all the emotion of the past weeks into a compelling case for their family's survival. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is about more than property rights or legal documents. It's about truth versus fraud, community versus corporate greed, and most importantly, the right of a family to stay together. Anna gestured toward the crowded courtroom. Look around this room. See the neighbors who came to support the Ward family, the friends who know their character, the community that has embraced them. These people understand what the railroad company seems to have forgotten, that some things are more valuable than money or land development. She moved to stand directly in front of Crawford's bench. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. The railroad's documents are fraudulent. Mrs. Catherine Ward never signed those papers because she was physically incapable of doing so. The signatures are forged, the notarization is fake, and the entire claim is built on deception. Anna's voice grew stronger as she continued. But even beyond the legal fraud, this case represents something larger. It's about whether a corporation from outside our community can use false documents and legal intimidation to destroy a family and steal their home. It's about whether money and power can triumph over truth and justice. She gestured toward the children sitting with Mrs. Henderson. Matthew, Sarah, and Tommy Ward have already lost their mother. Don't let them lose their father, their home, and each other as well. Don't let corporate fraud tear apart what grief and loss couldn't destroy. Anna returned to her seat, her heart pounding but her conscience clear. They had presented the best case possible with the evidence available. Now the decision rested with Magistrate Crawford. Crawford retired to consider his ruling, and the courtroom buzzed with nervous conversation. Anna watched the railroad lawyers conferring in urgent whispers, their confident demeanor noticeably shaken. Whatever happens, Noel said quietly, I want you to know that you've been magnificent. Catherine would be so proud of how you fought for her children. Anna felt tears prick her eyes. They're our children now, all of them. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, Crawford returned to his bench. The courtroom fell silent as he prepared to render his verdict. In the matter of the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad Company versus Ward, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed room, I find the evidence presented by the plaintiff to be insufficient and contradicted by substantial contrary evidence. Anna felt her heart leap, but Crawford wasn't finished. The medical testimony clearly establishes that Mrs. Catherine Ward was physically incapable of traveling to Denver during the relevant time period. The witness statements consistently support this medical evidence. Furthermore, the comparative analysis of signature samples strongly suggests that the signature on the railroad's document is fraudulent. Crawford's voice grew stern as he continued. Most seriously, the lack of proper notarization renders the document legally invalid regardless of its authenticity. The railroad company has failed to prove its claim to the Ward property. The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause, but Crawford banged his gavel for order. Furthermore, he said, raising his voice above the celebration, I find that the Ward family constitutes a stable, loving household, fully capable of caring for the children in question. Any suggestion to the contrary is contradicted by the evidence and the testimony of numerous community members. Anna felt Noelle's arm around her shoulders as tears of relief streamed down her face. They had won. Against all odds, against expensive lawyers and corporate power, they had won. The railroad company's claim is hereby dismissed, Crawford concluded. The Ward family retains full ownership of their property, and the children will remain in their father's custody. This court further recommends that the Territorial Attorney General investigate the fraudulent documents presented here today. As the crowd surged forward to congratulate them, Anna found herself surrounded by neighbors and friends who had supported their fight. Tommy broke free from Mrs. Henderson's protective grip and launched himself into Anna's arms, followed quickly by Sarah and Matthew. We won, Anna Mama, Tommy shouted. We get to stay together. Yes, sweetheart, Anna said, holding all three children as tightly as she could. We get to stay together. Later that evening, after the celebrations had died down and the children were finally asleep, Anna and Noel sat together on their front porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. The crisis that had threatened to destroy their family was over, but Anna knew that their real work was just beginning. "What are you thinking about?" Noel asked softly. Anna placed her hand over her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "About how we started this marriage as strangers trying to help each other, and somehow we've become this, a real family." "You know," Noel said thoughtfully, "I think Catherine would be pleased. Not just that the children are safe, but that they have you. That I have you." Anna turned to look at him in the starlight. "And I have all of you. Even when I was terrified we might lose everything I knew, I was exactly where I belonged." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the mountains and feeling the peace that comes after a hard-fought victory. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: a ranch to run children, to raise a baby, to prepare for a marriage, to continue building one day at a time. But tonight, the Ward family was safe together and home. The victory celebration in their front yard had lasted well into the evening, with neighbors bringing covered dishes and Mrs. Henderson organizing an impromptu feast that spilled from the house onto the porch and into the yard. But as Anna watched the last lantern disappear down the valley road, she felt the weight of exhaustion settling into her bones like winter cold. "Come on," Noel said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You need rest. The baby needs rest." Anna nodded, suddenly aware of how the day's stress had taken its toll on her body. The child in her womb had been unusually active during the hearing, as if responding to her elevated heartbeat and the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Mama used to say that babies could feel everything their mothers felt," Sarah said quietly, appearing beside them with an armload of dishes from the celebration. "Maybe the baby knew we were fighting for our family." Anna smiled at the girl's observation. "I think you might be right. This baby is going to be born knowing it's loved and wanted and fought for, just like the rest of us," Matthew added, coming up the porch steps with Tommy balanced on his shoulders. The youngest Ward child had fallen asleep during the festivities, worn out by the excitement and emotion of the day. As they tucked Tommy into bed, he stirred briefly and mumbled, "Are we really safe now, Anna Mama? The bad men can't take us away. We're really safe," Anna assured him, smoothing his dark hair back from his forehead. "The judge said so. We get to stay together, all of us." "Good," Tommy whispered, settling back into his pillow. "I dreamed about the baby last night. It was playing with us in the meadow, catching fireflies." Anna felt tears spring to her eyes at the innocent hope in his voice. This child had already been through so much loss and uncertainty in his short life. The fact that he could still dream of joy and family and simple pleasures spoke to the resilience of children and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. The days following their court victory brought a strange mixture of relief and adjustment. The immediate crisis was over, but Anna found herself dealing with the emotional aftermath of weeks of stress and fear. She woke some mornings with her heart racing momentarily, forgetting that they were safe, that the children were staying, that their home was secure. "It's normal," Dr. Hansen told her during a routine visit to check on the baby's progress. "You've been living with constant worry for weeks. It takes time for your body and mind to accept that the danger has passed." "I keep expecting someone to knock on the door with new papers, new threats," Anna admitted. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "The only thing that's going to drop is that baby," the doctor said with a gentle smile. "And not for another month or two if my examination is correct. You're doing well, Anna. Both of you are." As Christmas approached, Anna threw herself into creating new traditions for their blended family. She couldn't replace the memories the children had of previous holidays with their mother, but she could help them build new ones that honored the past while embracing their changed circumstances. "Mama always made star cookies," Sarah said one afternoon as they worked together in the kitchen, flour dusting both their aprons. She had a special recipe that came from her grandmother. Would you like to make them this year? Anna asked carefully. You could teach me the recipe. Sarah considered this for a moment, her young face serious with the weight of decision. I think Mama would like that. I think she'd want the tradition to continue. They spent the afternoon baking with Sarah, directing Anna through the intricate process of making the delicate star-shaped cookies that had been a Ward family tradition for generations. Anna watched the girl's face light up as familiar scents filled the kitchen, bringing back happy memories of holidays past. They smell just right, Sarah said with satisfaction as they pulled the first batch from the oven. Mama would be proud. Matthew had grown more talkative in the weeks since the hearing, as if the lifting of the threat to their family had freed him to be a child again, rather than a young man burdened with adult worries. He took special pleasure in planning Christmas surprises for everyone, consulting with Anna about gifts and decorations with the enthusiasm of someone who had rediscovered the magic of the season. I want to get Papa something special, he confided one evening as they sat by the fire, Anna mending socks while Matthew worked on his arithmetic homework. Something that shows him we're grateful for everything he did to keep us together. What did you have in mind? Anna asked, setting down her needle to give him her full attention. I've been saving my money from helping Mr. Schmidt at the bakery. I want to buy Papa a new watch. His old one broke when he fell off the roof fixing the shingles last month. Anna felt a warm glow of affection for this thoughtful boy who was so concerned with showing appreciation for his father's sacrifices. That's a wonderful idea, Matthew. Very generous and thoughtful. Anna, Matthew said, his voice growing more serious. I want you to know that I'm glad Papa married you, not just because it kept us together, but because you make him happy. I can see it in his face when he looks at you. He hasn't looked that way since before Mama got sick. Anna felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you for telling me that. It means more than you know. And I'm excited about the baby, Matthew continued. I've always wanted a little brother or sister to teach things to. Tommy's still little, but he's not really little anymore, you know. This baby will be different. It'll be ours from the very beginning. The casual way he said ours made Anna's heart swell. These children had truly accepted her and the baby as part of their family, not as intruders or replacements, but as additions to their circle of love. Tommy's excitement about the coming baby manifested in different ways. He had taken to talking to Anna's growing belly, regaling the unborn child with stories about the ranch, the animals, the best places to find interesting rocks and pretty flowers. Baby, he said one morning as Anna was getting dressed, when you come out, I'm going to show you the secret fort Matthew and I built in the big oak tree. But you'll have to wait until you're bigger to climb up there. Anna, Mama says babies can't climb trees right away. That's right, Anna agreed, smiling at his earnest explanation. But I'm sure the baby will love hearing about the fort and can't wait to see it when it's old enough. Even Noel seemed different in the weeks following their victory. The constant tension that had marked his features since Catherine's death had eased, replaced by something that looked almost like contentment. He smiled more readily, laughed at the children's antics, and had begun to treat Anna less like a helpful partner and more like a true companion. You know, he said one evening as they sat together reviewing the ranch's financial records, I think we might actually make a profit this year. The cattle prices are good, and with the railroad threat gone, we can focus on expanding the herd. That's wonderful news, Anna replied, though she was more focused on the way his eyes lit up when he talked about their future plans. Somewhere along the way, his dreams had begun to include her as a permanent fixture, not just a temporary solution to a crisis. I've been thinking, Noel continued, his voice growing more tentative, about expanding the house, adding on a proper nursery for the baby, maybe a larger kitchen. What do you think? Anna set down her pen and looked at him directly. I think that sounds like a man who's planning for a long future together. I am, he said simply. Anna, I know this marriage started as a practical arrangement, but it's become something more for me. You've become something more. Anna felt her pulse quicken at his words. Over the months of their marriage, she too had felt the relationship shifting and deepening. What had begun as mutual necessity had evolved into genuine partnership, respect, and affection. "It has for me too," she admitted. "I care about you, Noel, about all of you. This family has become my whole world." They might have said more, explored this new territory they were entering, but Tommy's voice, calling from upstairs, interrupted the moment. "Anna, Mama, I had a bad dream." Anna rose to comfort the child, but Noel caught her hand before she could leave. "We'll finish this conversation," he said softly. "Soon." Anna nodded, her heart racing with anticipation and hope. Perhaps their marriage of convenience was ready to become something deeper, something that honored both the practical needs that had brought them together and the feelings that had grown between them. Christmas Eve arrived with a soft snowfall that transformed the ranch into a winter wonderland. Anna stood at the kitchen window watching the children build a snowman in the yard, their laughter carrying through the glass like music. Her belly had grown considerably in recent weeks, and she moved more carefully now, aware of the precious cargo she carried. "They look happy," Noel said, coming up behind her to peer over her shoulder. "They do," Anna agreed. "All of them. Even Sarah seems lighter somehow, as if she's finally letting herself enjoy being a child again." "She's been carrying too much responsibility since Catherine got sick," Noel said. "Trying to be the lady of the house, the mother to her brothers. Your being here has freed her to just be 12 years old again." They watched in comfortable silence as Matthew helped Tommy roll a massive snowball for the snowman's base, while Sarah gathered twigs for arms. The scene was so perfectly normal, so beautifully ordinary, that Anna felt tears gathering in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Noel asked, noticing her emotional state. "Nothing's wrong," Anna said, wiping her eyes with her apron. "Everything's right. So completely, perfectly right that it almost doesn't seem real." Noel turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "It is real, Anna. This family, this life we're building together, it's all real." "I know," she whispered. "Sometimes I just can't believe how much my life has changed. 6 months ago I was alone and scared and facing an uncertain future. Now I have all this." She gestured toward the window, toward the children, toward the warm kitchen that smelled of baking bread and Christmas spices. "And we have you," Noel said softly. "Anna, I need to tell you something. What I feel for you. It's not the same as what I felt for Catherine, but it's real, and it's strong, and it's growing stronger every day." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "Noel, I love you," he said simply. "Not as a replacement for Catherine, not as a convenient wife, but as yourself. As the woman who fought for my children, who makes my house a home, who fills my days with purpose and my nights with peace." Anna felt her world shift and realign around those 3 simple words. "I love you too," she whispered. "I didn't expect to, didn't plan for it, but I do. I love you, and I love our life together." Noel leaned down to kiss her, and this time it was nothing like the chaste peck they'd shared at their wedding. This was the kiss of a man claiming his wife of a woman, accepting her husband of 2 people, acknowledging that their practical arrangement had blossomed into something beautiful and true. They might have kissed longer, but the sound of the front door slamming announced the children's return from their snow activities. Anna and Noel stepped apart, but not before Sarah caught sight of them through the kitchen doorway. "Were you kissing?" she asked, with the directness of a child's, snow still clinging to her coat and mittens. Anna felt her cheeks flame with embarrassment, but Noel answered matter-of-factly, "Yes, we were." "Good," Sarah said, with satisfaction. "Married people should kiss. It means they really love each other." Matthew and Tommy burst into the kitchen, then bringing cold air and excited chatter about their snowman. The moment of intimate conversation was over, but Anna felt as if everything had changed. She and Noel were no longer just partners in a practical arrangement. They were husband and wife in truth, bound by love as well as convenience. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, with icicles hanging from the eaves like crystal decorations. Anna woke to the sound of excited whispers in the hallway as the children tried to determine if it was late enough to wake the adults. "I think we can go downstairs now," she heard Matthew say. "The sun's up." "But Papa said not before 7, Sarah reminded him. "It has to be almost 7, Tommy insisted with the logic of a 6-year-old who had been awake since before dawn. Anna smiled and rose carefully from her bed, wrapping her robe around her expanded waistline. When she emerged from her room, she found all 3 children standing in the hallway in their nightgowns, hair tousled from sleep, but eyes bright with excitement. "Anna Mama," Tommy whispered loudly, "is it time for Christmas presents?" "I think it might be," Anna replied, unable to suppress her own excitement. This was her first Christmas as a mother, the first holiday she'd ever spent as part of a real family, and she wanted to savor every moment. Noel appeared from his room already dressed, but with his hair still askew from sleep. "Merry Christmas," he said, his eyes meeting Anna's with a warmth that made her heart skip. "Merry Christmas," she replied, and the simple greeting carried the weight of everything they'd acknowledged the night before. The morning passed in a blur of torn wrapping paper, delighted exclamations, and the controlled chaos that comes with children and Christmas presents. Anna had knitted mittens and scarves for everyone, while Noel had carved wooden toys for the boys and a beautiful jewelry box for Sarah. The children had pooled their resources to buy Anna a set of books about child-rearing and infant care, their faces glowing with pride as she exclaimed over the thoughtful gift. But it was Matthew's present to his father that brought tears to Anna's eyes. The boy had indeed saved enough money to buy a watch, a simple but elegant timepiece that he presented with obvious pride and nervousness. "It's to replace the one that broke," Matthew explained as Noel examined the gift with obvious emotion. "And so you'll always remember this Christmas when our family was together and safe." Noel pulled his eldest son into a fierce hug, his voice thick when he spoke. "Thank you, son. I'll treasure it always." "There's an inscription," Matthew said shyly, "on the back." Noel turned the watch over and read aloud, "To the best father and husband, love your family." "Matthew, this is—" He paused, overcome with emotion. "We all contributed to the inscription," Sarah said. "Even Tommy, though he can't read it yet." "I told them what words to use," Tommy added importantly. "Because you are the best papa and Anna Mama is the best mama and we're the best family." Anna wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by the love and acceptance these children had shown her. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined being part of such a moment, surrounded by people who considered her family, who had fought to keep her and welcomed her completely into their lives. After the gifts were opened and the breakfast dishes cleared, Anna found herself in the kitchen preparing Christmas dinner while the others played with their new toy in the parlor. She was peeling potatoes when she felt a familiar tightening across her belly, stronger than the gentle movements she'd grown accustomed to. She paused, hands still on the potato, waiting to see if the sensation would repeat. When it did several minutes later, Anna felt a flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. Dr. Hansen had said the baby wasn't due for another month, but babies, she knew, followed their own schedules. "Anna," Noel appeared in the doorway, concern creasing his features. "You look pale. Are you all right?" "I think—" Anna set down the potato and placed both hands on her belly. "I think the baby might be deciding to make Christmas even more memorable." Noel's eyes widened. "You mean now, today?" "I'm not sure yet. The pains are still far apart. But yes, I think it might be starting." Noel moved to her side immediately, his face cycling through excitement, worry, and determination. "What do you need? Should I send for Dr. Hansen, Mrs. Fletcher?" "Not yet," Anna said, though another contraction made her grip the edge of the counter. "First babies usually take a long time, but yes, someone should probably alert them that it might be soon." "Matthew," Noel called toward the parlor, "I need you to ride to Dr. Hansen's house. Tell him Anna's pains have started." "The baby's coming," came an excited chorus from the other room, followed by the sound of running feet. All three children appeared in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with anticipation and concern. Anna smiled at their eager faces, touched by their excitement about their new sibling's arrival. "It might be coming," she corrected gently. "Babies take their time, especially first babies. It could be hours yet." "But it's Christmas," Tommy said with delight. "The baby wants to be born on Christmas. It appears so." Anna agreed, though another contraction made her catch her breath. "Sarah, help Anna to her room," Noel instructed, falling naturally into the role of calm authority, despite the obvious worry in his eyes. "Tommy, you stay here with me. We'll get everything ready." "I can still help with dinner," Anna protested, but Noel shook his head firmly. "The only thing you need to worry about right now is bringing our baby safely into the world. Everything else can wait." "Our baby." Anna felt a warm glow at his words, even as another pain gripped her middle. This child would truly be theirs, born into a family that had fought for its right to exist, welcomed by siblings who had already claimed it as their own. The afternoon passed in a haze of increasing contractions and growing excitement. Dr. Hanson arrived within an hour of Matthew's summons, followed shortly by Mrs. Fletcher, who bustled into the house with the calm efficiency of a woman who had assisted at hundreds of births. "How are we doing, my dear?" Mrs. Fletcher asked, settling into a chair beside Anna's bed while Dr. Hanson examined her. "Scared," Anna admitted, "and excited, and grateful that it's happening here with all of you nearby." "This baby couldn't have picked a better day to arrive," the midwife said with a smile. "Christmas babies are special. They bring extra blessings to their families." As evening fell and Anna's pains grew stronger and closer together, she could hear the children's voices in the hallway outside her room. Noel had tried to send them to neighbors for the night, but they had refused to leave, insisting that they wanted to be present when their new sibling arrived. "Is Anna Mama going to be all right?" she heard Tommy ask in a worried whisper. "She's going to be fine," Matthew replied with the confidence of someone trying to reassure himself as much as his little brother. "Having babies is natural. Women do it all the time." "Mama did it 3 times, Sarah added, "and she was fine every time. Anna Mama is strong. She'll be fine too." Anna smiled despite the intensity of her labor pains. These children who had lost one mother were already fiercely protective of the woman who had become their second chance at family. As the hours passed and her labor intensified, Anna found herself thinking about Catherine Ward, the woman whose death had made this new life possible. She wondered if Catherine would approve of the family that had grown from the ashes of her loss, if she would be pleased that her children had found love and security again. "She would be proud," Noel said softly, as if reading her thoughts. He had been by her side throughout the labor, holding her hand during the worst contractions, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering words of encouragement and love. "How do you know what I was thinking?" Anna gasped between pains. "Because I was thinking the same thing. Catherine loved children, loved family. She would be so happy to know that our baby is going to grow up surrounded by love." The final stage of labor arrived just as the church bells in town began to chime midnight, marking the transition from Christmas Day to the day after. Anna bore down with all her strength, guided by Mrs. Fletcher's experienced voice, and sustained by the knowledge that her family was waiting just outside the door. "I can see the head," Dr. Hanson announced. "One more good push, Anna." With a final surge of effort that seemed to draw on reserves she didn't know she possessed, Anna delivered her child into the waiting hands of the doctor. The baby's first cry filled the room, strong and indignant, announcing its arrival to the world. "It's a girl," Dr. Hanson said, with satisfaction lifting the baby for Anna to see. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Anna sobbed with relief and joy as Mrs. Fletcher placed the cleaned and wrapped infant in her arms. The baby was perfect tiny, but perfectly formed, with dark hair that curled against her small skull, and eyes that seemed to take in the new world with alert curiosity. "Hello, little one," Anna whispered, touching the baby's soft cheek with one finger. "Welcome to your family." "Can we come in now?" came Sarah's voice from the hallway, barely contained excitement, evident even through the closed door. "Give us just a moment to get Anna cleaned up," Dr. Hansen called back. "Then you can meet your new sister." Sister. Anna felt a thrill at the word. This little girl would grow up with big brothers who would protect her and teach her about the world, and a big sister who would share secrets and dreams and the special bond between girls. When the door finally opened to admit the rest of the family, Anna thought her heart might burst from the fullness of her joy. Tommy rushed to the bedside with barely contained excitement, Matthew and Sarah following more cautiously but with obvious delight, and Noel bringing up the rear with an expression of wonder and love that took Anna's breath away. "She's so little," Tommy breathed, reaching out one finger to gently touch the baby's hand. "And look, she's holding my finger." "That's called the grasp reflex," Matthew said importantly, though his voice was soft with awe. "Dr. Hansen told me about it. All babies do that." "She's beautiful," Sarah said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed to get a better look at her new sister. "She looks like Papa, I think. Around the eyes. She looks like herself," Anna said, unable to stop smiling as she watched these children, her children, fall in love with their new sibling. "She looks like a ward." "What's her name?" Tommy asked. "We need to call her something." Anna looked up at Noel, who had been quietly observing the scene with tears in his eyes. They had discussed names over the past few weeks, but hadn't settled on anything definite. "I was thinking," Noel said softly, "about Grace. Grace Catherine Ward. Grace for the blessing she represents, and Catherine to honor the woman whose love made this family possible." Anna felt fresh tears spring to her eyes at the perfect rightness of the name. "Grace Catherine Ward," she repeated. "I love it." "Grace," Sarah said thoughtfully. "That's a beautiful name. Hello, Grace. I'm your big sister, Sarah. And I'm Matthew, your biggest brother," Matthew added solemnly. "I promise to always protect you and teach you important things." "I'm Tommy, your middle brother," Tommy chimed in. "I'm going to show you how to catch fireflies and find the best hiding spots and which horses are the nicest to pet." Anna looked around at her family, this impossible, wonderful family that had been born from loss and necessity and had grown into something beautiful and strong. Grace would grow up knowing nothing but love and security, surrounded by siblings who adored her and parents who had fought to keep their family together. "She's a Christmas baby," Tommy said with satisfaction. "That makes her extra special." "You're all extra special," Anna said, her voice thick with emotion. "Every single one of you." As the room gradually emptied, Dr. Sir Hansen and Mrs. Fletcher departing with promises to check on them tomorrow, the children reluctantly heading to their beds, with assurances that Grace would still be there. In the morning, Anna found herself alone with Noel and their new daughter. "Are you happy?" Noel asked softly, settling into the chair beside the bed. Anna looked down at Grace, who had fallen asleep in her arms, tiny features peaceful in the lamplight. Then she looked up at her husband, this good man who had asked her to marry him out of desperation and had ended up giving her everything she'd ever dreamed of. "I'm more than happy," she said. "I'm complete. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I belong, with exactly the people I'm meant to be with." "We all belong together," Noel agreed. "All of us. This family that started with a desperate proposal and a practical arrangement has become something I never dared to hope for." Anna shifted Grace to one arm so she could reach for Noel's hand. "Catherine would be proud," she said, "of the children of you, of the family we've built on the foundation of her love." "She would," Noel agreed, "and she would love Grace. She always wanted a daughter to follow Sarah." As if responding to her name, Grace stirred in Anna's arms, making the small sounds that newborns make in their sleep. Anna marveled at the perfection of her tiny features, the way her small fingers curled against the blanket, the absolute trust with which she slept in her mother's arms. "I used to think," Anna said quietly, "that my life was ruined when I found myself pregnant and alone. I thought I'd lost everything, my reputation, my future, my dreams. But it turns out I hadn't lost anything. I was just being prepared for something better." "We were all being prepared," Noel said, "for this moment, this family, this life we're going to build together." Outside, snow continued to fall, gently blanketing the ranch in pristine white that would greet Grace's first morning in the world. Inside, the house was warm and quiet, filled with the peace that comes after struggle, after victory, after the safe arrival of new life. Anna closed her eyes, holding her daughter close, feeling the solid presence of her husband beside her and the knowledge that her other children were sleeping safely down the hall. This was what happiness felt like, she realized. Not the giddy excitement of new romance or the fleeting pleasure of momentary joy, but the deep, abiding contentment of being exactly where you belonged, with exactly the people you loved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, new moments of joy and sorrow, as Grace grew and the family continued to evolve. But tonight Anna Ward was exactly where she was meant to be, surrounded by the family that had saved her just as surely as she had saved them. The woman who had buried her wife yesterday and asked her to marry him today had given her a gift beyond measure. He had given her a family, a home, a love that had grown from practical necessity into something profound and lasting. And now they had Grace, the perfect symbol of the new life they had built together from the ashes of loss and the strength of hope. In her arms, Grace slept peacefully, unaware that she had been born into a love story disguised as a business arrangement, a family forged by crisis and strengthened by choice. She would grow up knowing nothing but security and affection, surrounded by siblings who cherished her, and parents whose love had conquered every obstacle placed in their path. Anna smiled as she drifted toward sleep, her daughter warm and safe in her arms, her husband's steady breathing a comfort beside her. They had faced scandal legal challenges, the threat of separation, and the judgment of their community. They had emerged victorious, united, stronger than ever. The marriage that had begun with a desperate proposal on the day of a funeral had become something beautiful and lasting. Where sorrow had once reigned, grace had indeed risen, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings and endless possibilities. As Christmas gave way to the quiet hours of early morning, the Ward family slept peacefully in their mountain home, secure in the knowledge that love in all its forms had triumphed over every challenge they had faced. And in the nursery that Noel would build in the spring, Grace Catherine Ward would grow up knowing that she was the living symbol of hope, fulfilled dreams realized, and a family made whole.